important for us to question our government. I think that's and to find out as much as we can about what the government is really doing, what they stand for. That's becoming an informed citizen. And a lot of people forget what that's like nowadays, being an informed citizen. When you are an informed citizen, you're usually a part of this country. You're patriotic. You want the best for this country. And you do respect and want for the best for the troops. Now, during Vietnam, I never really did see the troops when they came home being spit upon or called baby killer. I did not witness that myself. We really wanted them to come home, just like we do now. We want these guys. We don't have a solution. I think there could be, with all the time and energy spent on these wars, there could be another solution to these problems. But we want the troops to come home. We don't disrespect them. And you can do both. Thanks, Jen.
Kathy, what were the first demonstrations like, and how the administrators of the college actually?
The first demonstrations in Madison were very peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
The administration was fine with it. They believed in us exercising our rights as students, as citizens, and they were all for it. They were, there was not a problem. It's only as time went on, and I really don't know. The only thing I can say is that one scene where they were all sitting, they had a lot of sit-ins, and they were sitting in, I think it was the Commerce Building. I wasn't at that one. I was at the one at Lake Monona, and when we had the vigil, I was there. I was also at the one with the civil rights with the black people. And by the way, the blacks then really were militant. They wore the berets, and a lot of them had guns over their shoulders. They were very militant, but they were very, very nice. They looked scary, but they weren't. Okay. What we would have is meetings. It was so different. We didn't have the internet. You'd be walking along the street, and somebody would, just like you said, a pink slip of paper, somebody would slip you a slip of paper and say, we're meeting at this address tonight. Mm-hmm. Be there if you want to be involved in the next demonstration. That's how it was communicated. And through flyers, through underground newspapers. There was no internet, of course. There were no cell phones. But the communication was there. And it was even there between universities. Okay. Anybody?
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Just one little part of the film, there was a politician that said we have to keep this war up to stop the spread of communism. That was their only bite they had to keep this war going. To me, it seemed like an illusion, some kind of fictitious thing they put in people's heads that there was communism was going to take over the world.
People are easily led, and people are easily frightened. Frightened because there was a big communist scare back in the 50s, especially led by Joseph McCarthy, not Eugene McCarthy, back in Wisconsin. And I remember, I'm that old that I remember that, my mother talking about it. And people were afraid of communists. They actually were. So even if they heard the word communist, they got all funny about it. They got fearful and nervous and, oh God, you better do something. So.
Well, the other part of my question was, I can look back and see it as some kind of illusion they planted in your head. And to me, it sounds a lot like what they're saying now about the Muslims taking over the world, coming here, cutting all our heads off. I haven't ever met a Muslim in my entire life. Okay? 53 years old yesterday. I've never met a Muslim. So where are these Muslims that are hiding behind trees and buildings and supposed to cut our heads off? Do you see any similarity there?
I really believe that ISIS is real and ISIL is real, and it was probably formed partly because of our presence over there, occupying their nations, which were at war amongst themselves anyway. And then we come over, like the arrogant Americans, and are going to try to straighten things out. which was only brought more chaos and more disruption. And the perfect grounds for formulating something like ISIS or ISIL. It is a real group of people, and they do cut off people's heads. I don't believe that, I really don't know what their plan is, but as far as Muslims, the pure Muslim does not believe in violence. Pure Muslim, Islam, Christianity, and Buddhism are all basically the same. They believe in love as a power, not violence. So to say Muslim and equate it with violence is not correct. I have known some Muslims, I have met them. Very nice people. They won't come out and tell you, especially now that they're Muslims. But as you get to know them, you find out that they are. And I do think that the phrase terrorism is, you can kind of equate that to the way communism was back then. Because when we hear terrorism now, we get, oh my God, the terrorists, the terrorists. Back then it was, oh my God, the communists, the communists. In that way, I can see an illusion like you're driving at their Chris. That's just me, my opinion.
Okay.
It's
Now,
not
back to your participation in the events at Wisconsin. Let me ask, what was the relation of the anti-war movement with the other reform issues that were taking place, especially the African American and civil rights movement?
Okay, I remember distinctly this. I would be at these meetings, many meetings, like that one girl was talking about. I did go to class, I did work too, but everything was centered around, like the person said in the movie, around these issues. Everything. The person you dated, you go out on a date, you talk about this stuff. I mean, it was everywhere. If you lived in Madison, that's what you did. And at these meetings, civil rights were discussed. There were blacks there. It was unified. It wasn't a lot of divisions. Like, when I first came out with anti-war protesting here, I was saying to Roberto, and of course Phil knows this, I said, where is everybody? Because this is what I came out of. We're a sparse handful of people on the corner. And it never did change. It remained a sparse handful. A core group of people would always show up, but there were no big crowds. Plus, there's all these divisions within the peace movement. Veterans for Peace, Code Pink, military families against the war. You know, the list goes on and on. They're all divided, and they find fault with each other. They all correspond on the internet. I guess they get together at events, big events in cities from time to time. I've been actually involved in some of those. But they're kind of disjointed. They're not really unified. Back then, it was, I'll tell you what, it was unified. We were for civil rights. We were anti-Vietnam. We were anti-war. We were for a lot of different rights on campus, like the guy was talking about. We wanted a student union, a tenant union, and that they did eventually get a tenant union and so forth. And it was very good there. I mean, the tenant union was wonderful. Civil rights, we went out with we were as one with the blacks, the civil rights activists.
Thank you. Next question I'd like to ask is, in the movie, you talked about the politics of in the election, 1968 presidential election, with Senator Eugene McCarthy. What is your experience in that time?
Everybody I knew was for Senator Eugene McCarthy. Everybody I knew. I personally liked him because the other two choices were not good. He was the only one, he didn't come right out and make strong statements against being in Vietnam, but he would insinuate that he was against the war and he wanted to pull out of there. He was careful. He was a politician. So I couldn't go gung-ho for Eugene McCarthy like some of my friends did. But really the choices were limited back then. Nixon I knew was a liar. That's my opinion again. Humphrey, I just No way, no way. So Eugene McCarthy would be the one that we would be behind. That was because there was nobody else.
Well, also, in your opinion, what would you say the critics of the anti-war movement had to say about the demonstrators at the war? Of the war?
Definitely that we were anti-American. Love it, America, love it or leave it. They love to say that. If you don't love America, why don't you just get the H out of here? You're anti-American, you're pro-communist. It was a lot of labeling, name-calling, nastiness, downright nastiness. People that were against the protests really were narrow-minded, did not listen to what we were saying at first. Some of them eventually did. Some of the parents, some of the people in the neighborhood who had sons that were killed started listening to what the protesters were saying and actually joined us. There were middle-aged people protesting. There were all kinds of, not just students, it was people from the community. Middle-aged people, blacks, whites, all different colored people, different ages. There were grandmothers, and people would bring their little kids to these protests. It was amazing. It was truly an amazing time.
You just mentioned, and we saw it on some of the signs of bringing the war home. What did that mean to you, and
What was it?
It says bring the war home. What motivated them to actually say, how did the political leaders respond to that? Was it actually bring the troops home, or was it bring
To me, it was
back
bring
home
the
here,
troops.
or what?
To me, it was to bring the troops home. I don't know anything else about bringing any war home. It was always about bringing the troops home.
Okay. Being that you were at the university, what was your opinion of the bombing at the Army Math and Research Center?
We were, it was a total shock because the innocent individual was killed. And of course, we were anti-killing, so that was just unfortunate. And everything changed after that. There was not the same feeling. The one blonde kid in the movie said there was a feeling of tension, and that is true. You could cut the tension with a knife after that happened, because it just wasn't the same. It was just terrible when that happened. And I was there when it happened, when we woke up hearing the explosion. And then we heard that somebody got killed. Somebody was in the lab, in the math building, and got killed. I was actually there. And my roommates came, and somebody got killed in the explosion. I couldn't even believe it. So it was all, the atmosphere was all different after that.
I know that you had a brother that served in Vietnam, and in your opinion, based on your experiences, how are the veterans greeted when they return back from the war of Vietnam?
What was it?
How are the veterans treated as they return home from Vietnam? Based on what you experienced.
Basically, it all depends on where you were. I think my brother told me out in California, they were not treated well. They were spit on, called baby killers. He said that really did happen in San Diego. In Wisconsin, a lot of people welcomed them back with open arms. I know families did, and even the protesters did. They were just glad that they were back. However, the veterans themselves, the Vietnam vets, did not feel like they fit in and felt excluded from society. There were a lot of them, I'm not saying most, but a lot of them began heavy drinking, sticking with their buddies, their little core group of Vietnam vets, going to wherever they go. I think it's the veteran VFWs and so forth, just drinking up a storm and not really mingling with the rest of society because, as my brother tells me now, they didn't feel at home. They felt like they couldn't quite acclimate anymore to our society. Okay? It was hard on them.
We noticed a lot of confrontation between the police and the protesters and the students. What was your experience with that?
I can tell you, I can see it as vividly as can be. The first people that got clubbed or hauled away were the young priests in Capuchins and nuns. It's surprisingly, because you never see them protesting now. They were out there, they were the first ones out there, they were laying in the streets, they lay right in front of the cop car. They'd be beaten, they'd be dragged off to jail, and as soon as they got out of jail, they'd be right back out there. These young priests, we called them Capuchins and nuns, they were first and foremost. The others followed, and we saw that happening, and how could that be? So, my friends went, not me, I was too chicken, they went right in there and I saw my friends clubbed. I actually saw them, and my one girlfriend got her arm broken from a policeman's club. Me, I chickened out, boy, I'd run. I ran back, I was not about to get clubbed. However, like I said, I got tear gassed many times, and pepper spray.
Wow.
Pepper spray too, they used a lot of that, but mostly tear gas.
Go ahead.
Were there any suicides, veterans just like today?
What was it, Joel?
Suicides.
A lot of suicide, a lot of alcoholism, drug addiction, and suicide. A lot. And it's still going on with Vietnam vets. Because now I'm a nurse, so I have been working with that age group, and they're just dying left and right of alcoholism, end-stage alcoholism, end-stage drug addiction. And it's a form of suicide. Thanks, Joel.
That's a great question, Joel. Thanks.
They're estranged. Their families are estranged from their families. A lot of them are divorced. A lot of them, sad to say, are homeless. They're your homeless people, the Vietnam vets. And families, we're not having anything to do with him, he's a hopeless alcoholic, or whatever.
The film showed some veterans of the time throwing their medals back.
Right,
Did you ever witness?
Yeah, I did.
You did?
I was at meetings where they did that.
Uh, So they were throwing away the sense of honor that the military
Right.
was trying to bestow on them.
Exactly.
Saying, no, we're not going on.
They
with
wanted
it."
to be one of us, they wanted to be one of the protesters.
Yeah.
Those were the guys that probably had more of a chance of acclimating, because they could get right in with the people their own age
see.
and feel accepted,
Hmm.
since they denounced all the honor and all the regalia that went with the military.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
You know, when you mentioned about Eugene McCarthy, and you weren't totally enthusiastic for him, but you found him a choice.
Yeah,
There was another choice until the California primary, Robert Kennedy. What did you think, and what did your friends think of Robert Kennedy's
we all loved
candidacy?
Robert Kennedy.
You know, more so than McCarthy.
I would say more so than
Yeah.
McCarthy. Yeah.
So you found him a ray of hope.
A ray of hope, right?
Mm. Mhm. All the more tragic.
All the more
In his
tragic
death.
is right. There were a lot of tragedies that happened right around that time.
Yeah.
Martin
Yeah.
Luther
It's
King,
a dark
Bobby
time.
Kennedy. Never
Yeah.
really cared for Teddy Kennedy, and I didn't like him in this film. He
Mm.
was such a smart aleck.
Yeah. Did you see that? Were you at that?
No, I
rally?
wasn't
Not
there.
that one? Mm-hmm.
But boy,
Yeah.
I heard about it.
He was clearly a spokesman for the administration at that
Oh, no,
point.
I'm fine. I actually was, I have a history project coming up and we have to get like someone very significant to speak in some sort of a podcast, and I was wondering if Kathy would like to, basically, like we have to pick a very historic individual who can provide some information on a historical event such as the Vietnam War. So,
Mhm.
Oh,
you know.
well,